Welcome to our channel. Today, I want to tell you a story about something I struggled with for a long time. I was afraid to speak English. The strange thing was that I had already studied English for years. I knew many words. I understood basic grammar. I could read simple articles. I could watch English videos and understand a lot of what people were saying. But when someone actually spoke to me in English, everything changed. My mind became quiet. I suddenly forgot simple words. I knew the answer, but I didn't know how to say it. Sometimes someone would ask me a very easy question. "Where are you from?" I knew exactly how to answer, but I would still hesitate. I might say, "I'm from." And then I would stop for a moment. I was thinking too much. Was my grammar correct? Was my pronunciation okay? Was my answer too simple? What would the other person think about my English? By the time I finished thinking, I felt nervous. Nervous means worried or uncomfortable about something that is going to happen. For example, I'm nervous before a test. I'm nervous when I speak English. That was exactly how I felt. I was afraid of making mistakes. A mistake is something you do or say incorrectly. But my real problem wasn't the mistakes. It was my fear of the mistakes. I thought that good English speakers didn't make mistakes. I thought they always knew the right word. I thought they could answer every question quickly. So when I made a small mistake, I felt embarrassed. Embarrassed means feeling uncomfortable because you think you have done something wrong or silly. For example, I felt embarrassed when I forgot his name. I was embarrassed because I couldn't answer the question. Because I was afraid of feeling embarrassed, I started speaking less, and speaking less created another problem. I wasn't getting enough practice. I was studying English, but I wasn't using English. I would spend time learning new vocabulary. I would write words in a notebook. I would watch lessons. I would read grammar explanations. But when it was time to speak, I stayed quiet. I thought I needed to learn more before I could start speaking. I told myself, maybe I need more vocabulary. Maybe my grammar isn't good enough. Maybe I'll speak when I feel more confident. But confidence didn't come, and I didn't understand why. Later, I learned something very important. Confidence doesn't always come before action. Sometimes confidence comes because you take action. You speak first, you make a mistake, you try again, then you slowly become more comfortable. Comfortable means feeling relaxed and not worried. At that time, I wasn't comfortable speaking English. I was always thinking about my performance. Performance means how well you do something. I wasn't thinking about communication. I was thinking about whether I sounded good. That was a big difference. For example, imagine someone asks, "What did you do yesterday?" I could answer with a simple sentence. "I went to work." But I wanted to give a perfect answer. Yesterday, I went to work, and after finishing my responsibilities, then I would get stuck. I was making a simple question difficult. Eventually, I learned that simple English is useful English. You don't need a complicated sentence to communicate a simple idea. You can say, "I went to work. I came home late. I was tired. I watched a movie. I talked to my friend." These sentences are simple, but they are real English. And when you can use simple English quickly, you can slowly build more advanced English on top of it. This is called building a foundation. A foundation is the basic part that supports something bigger. For example, a house needs a strong foundation. Your English needs one too. Useful words, useful expressions, simple sentence patterns, and regular practice. I also learned that knowing a word and using a word are not exactly the same thing. I might recognize a word when I heard it, but that didn't mean I could remember it quickly when I needed to speak. This is why practice matters. You need to move words from your memory into your everyday speaking. Now let's learn some useful vocabulary from my story. Nervous means worried or uncomfortable. Afraid means feeling fear about something. Mistake means something that is incorrect. Embarrassed means uncomfortable because of a mistake or situation. Confidence means believing that you can do something successfully. Comfortable means relaxed and not worried. Performance means how well you do something. And foundation means the basic part that supports something bigger. Now let's practice some useful sentence patterns. I was afraid to speak. I was afraid of making mistakes. I knew the answer, but I couldn't say it. I started speaking less. I wanted to sound perfect. I was thinking too much. I didn't feel confident. I wanted to become more comfortable. Now let's shadow them naturally. I was afraid to speak English. I knew many words, but I couldn't use them quickly. I was afraid of making mistakes. I worried about what people would think, so I started speaking less. But speaking less didn't make me better. I needed more practice. I needed to use the English I already knew. I didn't need perfect English. I needed confidence. Excellent. Now think about your own experience. Have you ever known the answer but stayed quiet? Have you ever forgotten a simple word because you were nervous? Have you ever worried that someone would judge your English? If you have, you're not alone. Many English learners experience the same problem, and there is good news. You don't have to know everything before you start speaking. You can start with what you already know. Use simple sentences. Make mistakes. Try again. And slowly, speaking will become easier. In the next chapter, I'll tell you about the biggest mistake I kept making while learning English. I thought I was preparing myself to speak, but actually I was avoiding the very thing I needed most. Practice. Keep listening, keep learning, and most importantly, keep speaking. After I realized that I was afraid to speak English, I thought I knew how to fix the problem. I thought I needed to study more, so I studied. I learned new vocabulary. I reviewed grammar. I watched English lessons. I read simple stories. I even made lists of words that I thought would be useful. But there was one thing I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't speaking. I kept telling myself that I would start speaking when my English became better. That sounds reasonable, but it was actually a mistake. I was waiting for confidence before I practiced, but I needed practice to build confidence. This was the biggest problem with the way I was learning. I was preparing to speak instead of actually speaking. For example, I might learn 10 new words in the morning. I would understand their meanings. I could recognize them when I saw them. But later, when I wanted to speak, I couldn't remember some of them. I would think, what was that word? I knew I had learned it, but I couldn't use it. This happens because recognizing a word and using a word are different skills. When you recognize a word, you understand it when you see or hear it. But when you use a word, you can remember it and produce it when you need it. This is why active practice is so important. Active means doing something instead of only receiving information. Reading can be useful. Listening can be useful. Studying grammar can be useful. But speaking requires you to actually produce English. I slowly started to understand this. Another problem was translation. When someone asked me a question in English, I often translated the question into my first language. Then I created my answer in my first language. Then I translated my answer back into English. This took too much time. By the time I finished translating everything, the conversation had already moved forward. I needed a different approach. Instead of translating every sentence, I started learning simple English expressions as complete pieces. For example, I learned, I'm not sure. I don't know. Let me think. I think so. I don't think so. That's a good question. These expressions were simple, but they were useful. I didn't need to translate them in my head. I could use them immediately. This made conversations feel easier. I also learned to use sentence patterns. A sentence pattern is a structure that you can use again and again with different words. For example, I want to learn English. I want to improve my pronunciation. I want to speak more confidently. I want to practice every day. The structure stays the same, only the final idea changes. Another useful pattern is, I usually. I usually wake up early. I usually drink coffee in the morning. I usually study English at night. I usually watch English videos before bed. Once I learned these patterns, I didn't have to create every sentence from zero. I had a structure ready. That made speaking faster. I also stopped trying to use difficult vocabulary all the time. Before, I thought advanced words would make me sound fluent, but sometimes I couldn't even use them correctly. I realized that a simple word I can use confidently is more valuable than a difficult word I can't remember. For example, instead of saying, "I am experiencing considerable difficulty," I can simply say, "I'm having a hard time." Both sentences communicate a problem, but the second one is much easier for everyday conversation. Considerable means large or important in amount or degree. Difficulty means a problem or something that is hard to do. These are useful words, but I didn't need them in every conversation. I needed practical English. English that I could actually use. Then I changed another habit. I stopped studying 20 new words every day. Instead, I chose a smaller number of useful words. I listened to them. I repeated them. I created my own sentences, and I tried to use them during the day. This helped me remember them much better. I was no longer just collecting vocabulary. I was practicing vocabulary. That difference was important. Collect means to gather things together. You can collect words, but collecting words is not the same as being able to use them. I wanted my vocabulary to become active. I wanted words to come naturally when I needed them, so I started using a simple rule. Learn it, hear it, say it, change it, use it. For example, I learned the expression, "I'm looking for." Then I practiced different versions. "I'm looking for my keys." "I'm looking for a new job." "I'm looking for a good restaurant." "I'm looking for an English book." The pattern became familiar, and once a pattern becomes familiar, speaking becomes easier. Let's learn some important vocabulary from today's chapter. Review means to study something again. Recognize means to know something because you have seen or heard it before. Active means involving direct use or participation. Translate means changing words from one language into another. Pattern means a structure that can be repeated. Practical means useful in real situations. Collect means to gather things together. And familiar means something you know well because you have experienced it many times. Now let's practice some useful sentence patterns. I want to, I usually, I'm looking for. I'm trying to, I need to, I'm learning to, I don't know how to, I have to. Now listen and shadow naturally. I want to improve my English. I want to speak more confidently. I usually practice in the evening. I'm looking for a simple way to practice. I'm trying to speak without translating. I need to use the words I already know. I'm learning to speak more naturally. I don't know how to say it. Let me think. That's a good question. Excellent. Now remember the biggest lesson from this chapter. Don't spend all your time preparing to speak. Start speaking with the English you already have. You don't need a huge vocabulary. You need useful vocabulary that you can actually use. You don't need complicated sentences. You need sentence patterns that become familiar, and you don't need to wait for confidence. Practice is what creates confidence. In the next chapter, something finally happened that changed the way I saw my English. I had no choice but to speak. I was nervous. I made mistakes. But for the first time, I discovered that something important was possible. I could communicate. Keep listening. Keep practicing. For a long time, I tried to avoid situations where I had to speak English. If someone asked me a question, I gave a short answer. If I didn't understand something, I stayed quiet. And if I didn't know a word, I stopped speaking. But one day, something happened that I couldn't avoid. I had to speak English. There was no time to prepare. No time to check grammar. No time to translate every sentence in my head. I was at a small shop and I needed some help. I walked toward the counter and waited for my turn. When it was my turn, the person behind the counter looked at me and asked, "Can I help you?" I understood the question immediately. But suddenly I felt nervous. I knew what I wanted. I had practiced the words before, but my mind went completely blank. Blank means empty or without any ideas. For example, my mind went blank during the test. That was exactly what happened to me. I took a breath. Then I said, "Yes, I'm looking for." I stopped. I couldn't remember the next word. For a few seconds, I just stood there. Normally, this would have been the moment when I gave up. But something was different that day. I remembered what I had been practicing. I didn't need the perfect word. I could explain what I wanted, so I said, "I'm looking for something I can use for work." The person asked, "What kind of thing?" I didn't know the exact word I wanted, so I explained. "Something small. I can carry it with me. I can use it every day." The person understood. "Oh, you mean this?" They showed me the product. I smiled. "Yes, exactly." That was it. The conversation was simple. It wasn't impressive. My grammar wasn't perfect. My pronunciation wasn't perfect, but I communicated. The other person understood me, and suddenly I realized something. I had been waiting for perfect English when I already had enough English to communicate. That moment changed my thinking. I didn't need to know every word. I needed to know how to continue when I didn't know a word. This is one of the most useful speaking skills you can develop. If you forget a word, don't stop. Describe it. Give an example. Use another word, or simply say, "I don't know the word, but..." Then explain the idea. For example, imagine you forget the word charger. You can say, "I don't know the word, but it's the thing I use to charge my phone." The other person will probably understand. This is called describing. Describe means to explain what something looks like, what it does, or what it is like. You can also use examples. For example, "It's something I use when I travel." Or, "It's a place where you can buy medicine." You don't always need the exact word. You need a way to communicate the meaning. After that experience, I started feeling different. I still made mistakes, but mistakes didn't scare me as much. I knew I could continue. I also learned some expressions that helped me when conversations became difficult. One of them was, "Could you say that again?" This is extremely useful. If you don't understand someone, you don't need to stay silent. You can ask them to repeat what they said. You can also say, "Could you speak a little more slowly?" Or, "Sorry, I didn't catch that." "I didn't catch that" means you didn't hear or understand something clearly. Another useful expression is, "What do you mean?" You can use it when you understand the words but don't understand the idea. For example, someone says, "That place is a bit expensive." You can ask, "What do you mean?" They can then explain. These expressions gave me control during conversations. I didn't have to understand everything immediately. I could ask, I could clarify, I could take a moment, and I could continue. Clarify means to make something clearer. For example, "Could you clarify what you mean?" But in everyday English, you can simply say, "Could you explain that?" That's often easier and more natural for two learners. I also learned to use another powerful expression. "Let me try again." This became one of my favorite sentences. If I said something incorrectly, I didn't stop. I simply said, "Let me try again." Then I said the sentence again. That small expression removed a lot of pressure. I didn't have to be perfect on my first attempt. I could try again. Attempt means an effort to do something. For example, "That was my first attempt." "I'll make another attempt." But in everyday conversation, you can simply say, "I'll try again." That is simple and useful. After that day, I started looking for small opportunities to speak. I ordered food in English. I asked simple questions. I talked to people when I had the chance. I didn't suddenly become fluent, but something important had changed. I was no longer waiting for the perfect moment. I was creating practice for myself. Now let's review some useful vocabulary from this chapter. Blank means empty, especially when you suddenly cannot think of anything. Describe means to explain what something is like. Meaning is the idea that something expresses. Clarify means to make something easier to understand. Attempt means an effort to do something. Opportunity means a chance to do something. Communicate means to share information or ideas with another person. And continue means to keep doing something. Now, let's practice some useful expressions. Can I help you? I'm looking for, I don't know the exact word. Let me explain. I mean, could you say that again? Could you speak more slowly? I didn't catch that. What do you mean? Let me try again. Now let's shadow them naturally. I'm looking for something. I can use for work. I don't know the exact word. Let me explain. It's something I can use every day. Could you say that again? Could you speak a little more slowly? I didn't catch that. What do you mean? Let me try again. I don't need the perfect word. I just need to communicate my idea. Excellent. That was the biggest change for me. Before, I thought a speaking mistake meant I should stop. Now I understood that a mistake could simply mean, try again. If I forgot a word, I could describe it. If I didn't understand someone, I could ask. If my sentence was wrong, I could correct it. I didn't need to escape from the conversation. I could stay in the conversation. And that gave me something I had been missing for years. Confidence. Not perfect confidence. Not the feeling that I would never make mistakes. It was simply the confidence to keep going. In the next chapter, I'll explain what happened when I started using this new way of thinking every day. I was still making mistakes, but slowly, English started feeling less like a subject I was studying and more like a skill I was actually using. Keep listening, keep practicing, and remember, you don't need the perfect word to communicate a good idea. After that experience at the shop, something changed in the way I practiced English. I was still nervous sometimes. I still forgot words. I still made grammar mistakes. But I stopped thinking that every mistake was a problem. Instead, I started asking myself a different question. How can I keep the conversation going? That question helped me more than trying to speak perfectly. I began to notice something about fluent speakers. They don't always use difficult words. They use familiar words quickly. They know common expressions. They can explain an idea in different ways. And when they make a mistake, they simply continue. So I decided to practice the same skills. The first change I made was learning English in phrases instead of only learning individual words. For example, I didn't just learn the word decision. I learned, I need to make a decision. I haven't made a decision yet. It was a difficult decision. This helped me remember the word because I could see how it worked in a real sentence. I did the same thing with everyday vocabulary. Instead of learning only the word busy, I learned, I'm really busy today. I've been busy all week. Are you busy right now? Now I had several ways to use the same word. This made my vocabulary more flexible. Flexible means able to change or be used in different ways. I also started paying attention to expressions that people use all the time. For example, give me a second. Let me think. That makes sense. I see what you mean. Actually, by the way, these expressions may seem simple, but they are extremely useful. They help you connect your ideas and keep conversations natural. For example, imagine someone asks, "Do you like working from home?" Instead of immediately trying to create a perfect answer, I can say, "Let me think. Actually, yes, I do. I like working from home because it's quieter." That sounds natural, and I don't need advanced vocabulary. I just need useful expressions and simple sentence patterns. Another thing I started doing was speaking to myself. At first, it felt strange. I would walk around my room and describe what I was doing. I'm making coffee. Where did I put my keys? I need to leave in 10 minutes. It's raining outside. I should take my umbrella. These sentences were very simple, but they were connected to my real life. That was important. I wasn't memorizing random sentences. I was practicing sentences I could actually use. Then I started talking. About my day, I would say, today was quite busy. I had a meeting in the morning. After work, I went to the store. I was tired, so I came home early. This helped me practice the past tense naturally. I also talked about my plans. Tomorrow, I'm going to meet a friend. I need to finish some work. I might go shopping. This gave me practice with the future as well. I wasn't sitting at a desk thinking about grammar rules. I was using grammar while talking about my own life. That made grammar easier to remember. Another important habit was shadowing. I would listen to a short sentence and repeat it, but I didn't repeat it 20 times. I focused on understanding it first. Then I listened carefully to the pronunciation. Then I repeated it naturally. I tried to copy the rhythm and intonation. Rhythm is the pattern of sounds and stress when we speak. Intonation is the way our voice goes up and down while speaking. These things can make your English sound more natural. For example, listen to this sentence. Are you coming with us? Don't say every word with the same strength. Listen to the natural rhythm. Then repeat it. Are you coming with us? The goal isn't to copy someone perfectly. The goal is to become comfortable producing English sounds and sentence patterns. I also created small speaking challenges for myself. One day I decided to speak English for 5 minutes without stopping. I didn't worry about mistakes. I just kept talking. If I forgot a word, I explained it. If I made a mistake, I corrected myself. If I didn't know what to say, I talked about something around me. It was difficult at first, but it became easier. Then I increased the time. 5 minutes became 10 minutes. 10 minutes became 15. I wasn't suddenly fluent, but I was becoming more comfortable, and that was real progress. Progress means improvement over time. It doesn't have to be a huge change. Small progress is still progress. I also stopped comparing my English with other people's English. Someone else might speak faster than me. Someone else might have better pronunciation. Someone else might know more vocabulary. That didn't matter. I started comparing myself with the person I was yesterday. That was a much healthier way to measure progress. Let's review some useful vocabulary from this chapter. Phrase means a small group of words that work together. Flexible means able to be used or changed in different ways. Expression means a common way of saying something. Natural means normal and comfortable, not forced. Rhythm means the pattern of sounds and stress in speech. Intonation means the way your voice rises and falls. Challenge means something difficult that tests your ability, and progress means improvement over time. Now, let's practice some useful expressions. Give me a second, let me think. That makes sense. I see what you mean. Actually, I agree. By the way, I wanted to ask you something. I'm not sure, but I think. Let me explain. What I mean is, I'll try again. Now let's shadow them naturally. Give me a second. Let me think. That makes sense. I see what you mean. Actually, I agree. By the way, I wanted to ask you something. I'm not sure, but I think you're right. Let me explain what I mean. I'll try again. Excellent. Now think about the difference between my old way of learning and my new way. Before, I collected words. Now, I use words. Before, I studied grammar for hours. Now, I use grammar while talking about my life. Before, I waited until my English was perfect. Now, I speak with the English I already have. Before, mistakes made me stop. Now, mistakes tell me what to practice. That was the real change. I didn't become a confident speaker because I suddenly learned thousands of new words. I became more confident because I started using the English I already knew. And the more I used it, the more natural it became. In the final chapter, I'll show you the simple routine I created for myself. It didn't require expensive classes. It didn't require a speaking partner every day. It simply required regular practice and a little patience. And most importantly, it helped me stop being afraid of my own English. Keep listening. Keep practicing. And remember, progress begins when you use what you already know.